So welcome to our seminar about the title After China's Fifth Plenum, What's Next? Today, I'm here with three distinguished speakers. I would like to thank them all for having accepted our invitation to participate in this webinar in order to discuss about the future. My name is Stefano Sartorio, analyst and project manager at Competere, and I will guide you through this event. Our webinar is recorded, and in the meanwhile, it will be streamed on Facebook. We will then share the video on our website, competere.eu. And I also would like to remind you that our Q&A section is free and ready to receive your inputs, and we will be here then ready to acquire them all. Starting from the basics, Competere Policies for Sustainable Development is an independent think tank with the goal of contributing with smart policies designed to overcoming of modern challenges. And we do that with an eye always look to sustainability as our paramount value. We work with civil society, enterprises, institutions, both in the EU and on international scale, aware that global problems need cooperation to be solved. Today, we'll address precisely one of the most pressing issues of our decade. What is China going to do in the next 5 years? Since the country is among the most influential ones in the world, also carrying the global equilibrium of economic power in the middle of Asia, speaking about China also means speaking about the future. And it doesn't matter for who we are standing for. Nonetheless, the one so-called Central Empire now is too big to be ignored. With Competere, we published a focus on China's Fifth Plenum with the collaboration of four brilliant scholars, Elodie Cardonnet, Federico Campanile, Domenico Rapace, and Han Seo-yoon, in order to understand the major direction where the country is heading in the next years. Unfortunately, we are still unaware of the precise formulation that will be used in drafting the next 5-year plan. We will probably know in March, but we can try to estimate some of the direction that China will be taking in the near future. Starting with our debate, I firstly turn to Lorenzo Lamperti, journalist for China and East Asia at Affari Italiani. Lorenzo, thank you for being here. We will use three keywords to drive our conversation today. Chinese economy in general has been a core topic of this plenum, as for the previous ones, of course. The first keyword for this first contribution should be double circulation, in my opinion. In our report on China's Fifth Plenum with Competere, we address this, highlighting the peculiarity of building the internal engine to better exploit external opportunities. What do you think about this concept, and how do you see a future of Chinese position in the global stage in the next 5 years? Last but not least, how does the recent regional comprehensive economic partnership agreement fit into the country's quinquennial strategy?
Thank you, Stefano, and thank you to Competere think tank, of course. I'm delighted to be here with you and the other guests of this event whose speech I'm looking forward to listen to. I agree that dual circulation is one of the first keywords, if not the first, actually, that comes from the Chinese Fifth Plenum. It is probably the super keyword that is related to all the other ones. And it shows better than others that China's transformation, China wants to transform from world fabric into an innovation world leader. As expected by many analysts, this 5-year plan fosters exactly the dual circulation, a concept that first was mentioned by Chinese President Xi Jinping at the 30th anniversary of Shenzhen's special economic zone. And this is not a trivial choice because, as we know, for Chinese presidents, the trips to Guangdong are really important and have also strong symbolic meanings. From here, for example, Deng Xiaoping initiated the reforms and the opening of the 80s, starting with the implementation of the special economic zones, of which Shenzhen exactly represents the most emblematic case. Also from here, in 1992, Deng found the right formula to open the miracle season of growth and development, a programmatic synthesis of the dialectic between conservatives and reformers of pre-Tiananmen period. And it's also from here that Xi have been 2 more times, in 2012 and 2018, first to make the internal turning point that led to Made in China 2025, and then for the other important project, the Greater Bay Area. Again, from here, I think Xi tried to complete the transformation of China from a word factory to a technological giant, in a China that no longer hides its ambition, and at the same time cannot think, as in 1992, of moving without the eyes of the world focus on it. The concept of dual circulation, of course, has 2 equally strong components. One is the internal circulation, which refers to domestic economic activities. And the second one is external circulation, which relates to China's economic links with the outside world. So the dual circulation will be structured in 2 processes. The internal cycle will focus on the development of domestic production and consumption, and it will be the main focus to bring the economy forward. And this will be complemented by the international cycle, which will still rely on foreign trade and investments. I think that this concept shows and signals that China wants to reduce the role of international trade in its economy, strengthen its domestic one. China's move would indeed helping its economy to break away from the traditional dependence on exports as a model of growth and try to solve problems caused by overcapacity. And this policy has also, as competitor think tank highlighted in its report, has raised some concerns on China's commitment to the Belt and Road initiative. And in fact, if we look to the numbers, China's 2 largest policy banks, the China Development Bank and the Export-Import Bank of China, together lent more money than the World Bank every year from 2013, when the Belt and Road was launched by Xi Jinping, to 2016. But overseas lending has dried up recently, as the annual loan amount from these 2 Chinese banks has collapsed from a peak of $75 billion in 2016 to just $4 billion in 2019, based on recent data. So why China decided to implement this dual circulation? I think for a couple of factors are at play. First of all, as the COVID-19 pandemic spread around the world, across the world, the economic outlook outside China does not look particularly optimistic at the moment. And in the same time, China's economic recovery speeds up. Latest GDP data show an increase of around 4.9% in the 3rd quarter. And also the second factor is that the worsening China-US relations have also loomed large in China's consideration, as the US contemplates decoupling and seems bent on crippling China's economy and technological development. This, I think, have pushed China to accelerate a trend that was already clear, I feel, since Made in China 2025 plan. And the global pandemic of the new coronavirus has just accelerated the changes in the world. And so this is why China moved faster on the second key word that I want to talk about, that is self-sufficiency. Of course, now policymakers in Beijing believe the time has come for the realization of a more stable society. And this modernization strategy will transform in their mind the country into a leading global technological and cultural powerhouse as well. So as a continuous support to the real economy through upgrading, modernizing the industrial sector and optimizing the economy to become more quality-driven is at stake with this dual circulation strategy that was implemented from the fifth plenum, and as well increasing the overall competitiveness of the Chinese economical system. This goes as well with another keyword, that is multilateralism. As we saw, China stay connected to the global trade, and in fact, more efforts in opening up China's market to foreign investors were made recently, while better integrating the country in a global supply chains. So reforming the system in order to realize a high-level socialist market economy, while achieving a win-win cooperation in the international scenario, is the main goal of Chinese Communist Party. And in this context, it enters perfectly the thing that you mentioned, that is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that was signed by China and the 10 Southeast Asian countries, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Was signed just some weeks ago, November 15th. And it created the biggest trade bloc in history, and without US. Actually, many analysts see this as an agreement that is unbalanced in favor of China, and this is also why Japan is trying and will try to involve India as well in this agreement. The fourth keyword, of course, is technology, because this is the main keyword for which the self-sufficiency that China wants. We saw in the last days, two data, for example, that China tops world in artificial intelligence patent filings, surpassing the US for the first time. And always in the recent days, Chinese scientists claim breakthrough in the quantum computing race. That is another aspect of this of a technology race, of course, between the two biggest superpowers. But the process of self-sufficiency in technology will be gradual, of course, because at the moment, China still relies about some key technological sectors on other countries. For example, about semiconductors. Even more after the Donald Trump's move about Huawei, for example, that shifted the TSMC, the Taiwanese global leader in semiconductor, and because Trump banned this TSMC to export, for example, to Huawei. So the first area that China is in urgent need to attain self-sufficiency is exactly this, the semiconductor industry, because it's of course it's a vital industry for the fourth industrial revolution that is to come. The fifth keyword is green, because the fifth plenum as well highlighted the willing of China to building an eco-friendly society. That has been a priority for China in the last decade. And as well, Xi Jinping aims to reach a peak of carbon emission by 2030 and to achieve the carbon neutrality before 2060. Of course, it's not an easy goal, but China wants to go greener. The sixth keyword is, I feel, ambition. And why this? I feel it's clearly represented by three events that came just after the fifth plenum. The first one is the declaration of victory on poverty alleviation. More than 55 million people were lifted out of poverty in the last 5 years, and 60 million jobs have been created. Now, policymakers in Beijing believe that the time has come for the realization of a more stable society. The second event is the Chang'e 5 lunar mission, in which we saw for the first time a Chinese flag on the moon from the images of China National Space Administration. The third event is exactly the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that puts China in a position of like a multilateralism's champion. Of course, in China's view, because in the last year we saw the America withdrawal from the global stage, and China filled many voids in geopolitical and in a geopolitical way and international organization. And the signing of this deal is another step in China's view for taking a leadership also in the multilateralism stage. But the ambition is coming also from COVID. In the beginning of the epidemic, it was felt as the coronavirus was described as a dark swan for Xi Jinping and China. In fact, it became more an issue for Western democracies and for Donald Trump as well, that just lost the election. I feel it's a meaningful speech that Le Yucheng, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, gave just 2 days ago. And he saw exactly this. He saw that this year, China experienced a typical example of plot reversal, meaning turning a crisis into an opportunity. And the epidemic did not become China's Chernobyl moment, Le Yucheng said, but rather a shining moment for the socialist system with Chinese characteristics, he claims. So also COVID has accelerated the ambition of China, because China does not accept to being told from others anymore, as it shows for example, the so-called wolf warrior diplomacy, as we saw in the last months. And the last example of this is the diplomatic war with Australia, for example. China does not hesitate to punish other countries anymore, and that highlights the dark point of Western democracy's model. With the application of politics of, I would say, whataboutism, because, for example, of course, US speak up about Hong Kong or Xinjiang, and China reply with Black Lives Matter. Or, for example, Australia speak up as well about Xinjiang or Taiwan, or about the virus origin, and China reply with the Australian Army's violences in Afghanistan. The seventh keyword, I feel it's vision, because as your report brilliantly said, this 5-year plan is really peculiar, because actually is a 15-year plan. The main goal of this plan stretch beyond in its scope widely above 2026, and it reach actually 2035. And it's a perspective called Vision 2035. And this is connected to the 8th keyword, that is Xi, that is Xi Jinping, because it's now clear that in the 2022 Congress, he can further strengthen his position at the head of the party. The signs of his long-term stay are becoming increasingly clear, and starting from an insistence on 2035 as a time horizon for the new development strategies, to move on the persistent absence of a designated heir, up to the lack of appointments in the military commission, for example, whose position as vice president is usually considered a sort of beginning to the possibility of becoming party leader. And instead, indeed, according to what has been written in recent weeks by the Straits Times, there is even the chance of the coming back of the title of Great Helmsman, that of Mao, and at the next Congress in 2022. And the last keyword I want to talk about here is inequality, because, of course, not everything is perfect in the Chinese plan, and the next 5-year plan actually is also focusing on reducing inequalities and developing, for example, rural areas. Because still, an army of 600 million people, 600 million people is still living with a with a general monthly income of just a little bit more than $100 US. And for example, it's not just the classical dividing between the coast, the East Coast, and the Western region, the Western provinces, but now it's also spreading a big difference between North and South. Because, for example, Beijing is the only city in the northern half of the country to be included in the China's top 10 cities in terms of economic size this year. So also the economic weighting of northern China as a proportion of the national economy has dropped to about a third this year from nearly half in 2008, according to the data of National Bureau of Statistics. So this is also a big issue that China will try to focus on in the next 5 years.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo. Thank you so much. I think you highlighted a lot of interesting concepts. Of course, you spoke about dual circulation, you spoke about self-sufficiency, and I think, and also the idea that China wants to achieve these objectives through win-win cooperation. I think that one of your keywords was ambition. So I think that China is cultivating its ambition really, really high to achieve all those goals in the next 5 years. But we are here to watch and to see how China will achieve those goals. So thank you for your opinion, your research, Lorenzo. I'm then going to Mirko. Thank you, Mirko, for being here with us and sharing your experience on Chinese market and Chinese society. Mirko Wormuth is partner at Ozone Capital, co-founder of China Briefs, and writer and entrepreneur in the digital economy. So being aware about your lifelong knowledge of the country, I think that the second keyword for this contribution should be self-reliance. Also, Lorenzo mentioned something about that before. This concept has sparked a lot of criticism and fear, even towards companies and public entities, on the fact that China might choose to do it itself. But observing several examples during Chinese political history, this stance seems to be no more than a circular narrative, resembling China's desire to not becoming independent on foreign countries regarding key assets, in this case also technological assets. This term has been again used by Xi Jinping during the last plenum, mostly highlighting the necessity of becoming self-sufficient in technology production. From your point of view, what might be the consequences of this stance for European countries and companies, and which opportunity might be arising from it?
Thanks, Stefano, and thanks for having me on the panel. First off, I'm not a scholar. I'm an entrepreneur. I used to be a lawyer in China. I've lived there the last 25 years. Just recently moved back, so there's a bit of background on that. I find this is a key word for sure: self-sufficiency or self-reliance. Sort of stepping back for a moment, and I'm not sure what anybody else's perception was, but when this whole dual circulation strategy thing came up first time, at least the first time I've seen it in Chinese and in English, I was thinking, like, what is this? Like, why do we need these sort of really weird sounding terms to describe something that's actually pretty straightforward, right? And just to be sure, this is actually something that goes way back to Hu Jintao. He used it already in 2009 when basically China pulled the world out of the biggest financial crisis we've seen in a long time, right? But I think from my own understanding, reflecting on that and what I'm reading in sort of Chinese blogs, is it's really that typical Chinese yin and yang type of tension between openness and independence, right? So they're struggling with that, and they've been pushed into a corner by Trump to really come up with something. I know eventually they called it dual circulation strategy again, but it's really that conflict of like, how can we make sure we're never being pushed around, especially when it comes to sort of this high-tech development. Semiconductor was being mentioned before. Everybody has Huawei on their mind and knows what's been going on there, seeing the stuff that happened with TSMI, and then also SIMC, the big Chinese player, that they're really trying to ramp up their own technologies at home now. But I think coming to your question and answering that in more detail, in terms of opportunities, because from all I'm reading, it is very clear to me that this is not a black and white thing. There are going to be tons of opportunities. I just talked to the German guy who's been running BASF, the big German chemical company. They just opened another $1 billion factory in China. They're expanding. There are a lot of automobile companies. They're expanding. They're buying themselves out of their own joint ventures. So in terms of really having foreign economic players expanding their game, coming into the country, we will still see that. It will increase. And I don't think we should be too easily scared off or scared away even by these new terms that are being thrown around. Do we have to take them seriously? Yes. Will it mean that if you are a high-tech provider that forever you'll be able to provide your high-tech stuff to China? I don't think so. There's going to be a time when they will be able to develop this in-house, if you like. If you compare China to a house, this is going to be in-house development. And they will provide it by themselves based on their own scientific advancements. And this is a reality for every high-tech player out there who still sees China as a market. But at the same time, when you read up on internal sort of party documents, if they're being sort of published, in some obscure Chinese blogs, you will see that they still need desperately foreign expertise, foreign money that's still flowing massively into the country. Actually, as we speak, there's huge deregulation for all the foreign financial joint ventures. Like Goldman Sachs is just going to buy their local JV partner out of their securities business. JP Morgan is negotiating that. So there's still a lot of stuff happening, and I'm quite optimistic that there are opportunities out there. And one thing that the party, smart as they are, always mentions is the fact that they need strong foreign competitors in the country to keep the Chinese players on their toes, so that they are being under pressure to perform. Nobody wants a competition, like an actual race, to run it alone. Like how fast are you going to be running the marathon just by yourself, right? You need a pacer. You need people to really push you. And the Chinese government is just too smart not to know that. And so sort of looking out there, there are going to be tons of opportunities. Obviously the biggest opportunities, they're going to stay there for a long time, is everything that has to do with resources, especially those resources that China doesn't have. Coming back to the Australia angle we talked about a bit earlier, I mean, there's a lot of strategizing going on in Australia at this point, how to play their iron ore strength, right? Because China so desperately needs it. There's almost no other place where they can source it. And so this is sort of an area where I feel we're going to see a lot of interesting developments. Is it going to be tougher to deal with China? Yes. Are we going to be so much more confident now? Yes. They've done so well. I don't know about you guys there in Italy, but I can tell you here in Munich, Germany, oh my God, like the way they're dealing with COVID, it's almost embarrassing coming from China and seeing how they've dealt with it. Obviously, there are different systems in place. I understand that, but they've really pulled out of it. I just had a chat with my friends in Beijing, and they're in a pub, right? They're having pizza, they're sitting together, they have a beer, and they're not wearing any face masks. And not to sort of become too anecdotal here in this conversation, but these are just sort of little pieces of evidence of how well they've done. And they are, they're right to be proud of it. And this sort of increased confidence is something that we need to be reckoned with. Is China well advised to play, let's say, the Australia game like they're playing it now? I'm not sure. I have my doubts. And I'm not sure they're making themselves friends. And they even might trigger something on the Western side, on the sort of democratic hemisphere of this world, to really seek new alliances and team up against China. So in these terms, it's not a smart move, as it wasn't a smart move by Trump to really ban all these companies to deal with China, because that pushed China into independence, and independent they will become. And I'd rather have my enemies very close by and make sure they all collaborate, right? Because in the end, trade and collaboration is what makes this world safe. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mirko. You gave us a lot of insight. As you said, maybe first time you heard this self-reliance, let's say, word was 2009 with Hu Jintao, if I got it right, and that's true. I mean, also all these terms in Chinese politics are always like modified, like reformed to try to fit in modern challenges, in modern.
Sorry, just to correct, the Shuang the dual circulation thing, that is something from that Hu Jintao already used in 2009.
And it was also really interesting. You mentioned about a yin-yang narrative also regarding dual circulation, because I think that that's really, I mean, that's true. It's really interesting to look at Chinese politics right now, because they are somehow trying to make that step further and trying to do the qualitative step. And it will be interesting to see how they are going to do this in the next 5 years. So now changing the angle of the conversation, I would go to Lorenzo Termine. Lorenzo Termine is a PhD candidate at the Department of Political Sciences in Sapienza University of Rome. He's also a research fellow at the Italian Center for Geopolitical Studies, geopolitica.info, on China's military and nuclear strategy. In your case, the third keyword for our debate would be national security. So in this plenum, the PLA has been defined as the vanguard of the PRC national security. The explicit highlighting of the role of the army in the plenum is certainly resembling the tense relation with the United States, of course, but also the increasing consciousness that national interests are growing at a fast pace. Therefore, apart from the protection of the national soil, which obviously remains the core priority, the projection capacity of the country is becoming more important. Given your past and current research in Chinese military strategy, how would you interpret this occurrence? And what are the theaters or fields in which China is aiming at increasing its capacity, military capacity?
Okay, so thank you, Stefano, for your really interesting questions, and more in general, thank you, Stefano, and thank you, competitor, for hosting me today, for convening me today for this great debate, and thank you, the previous presenters. Great takeaways from your presentation. Thank you very much. So, what about China's military strategy, and really more in general, China's military posture after the fifth plenum? We can say that the fifth plenum was not really a big deal for China's military strategy. And here I'm recalling also what your researcher Federico Campanile wrote in the wrapper, actually. So basically, it really went how we expected to go. So it was a confirmation of the road that was taken in the 19th Congress. And so no major news, and it is kind of business as usual. So they laid down the new proposal for the 14th 5 years plan, and it's a really interesting document proposal. You can already read it online, and if you really look at the proposal, you can see that defense and national security are the 13th and the 14th priority of the next 5-year plan. And it is really interesting for China, because if you know China, you know that the sequencing, the listing of priorities, the short list of priorities has a political value. And here I'm recalling, you know, the 4 modernization program back in the 70s, where national defense was the last priority. So listing is politically listing priorities. So national defense is the point 13 and 14. And this means that it is important, but as Lorenzo and Mirko have already said, there are bigger priorities for China right now. This is not to say that, of course, national security is secondary, but in the list of, you know, urgencies, it comes in the last places. And so, of course, there is all this recalling of CPC and CMC leadership upon national defense. So it is the confirmation of what has always been said about China's military. The CPC and, of course, the Central Military Commission of the CPC is at the top of the hierarchy in the national defense establishment. And so this is basically business as usual. But then there is an interesting takeaway from point 14, and is the intelligentization of national defense. And here we mean that probably China is shifting from a network-centric warfare, so network-centric way of, you know, waging war, towards a really integrated way of waging war with new technologies, just like artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is intelligentifying national defense and military strategy. And this is interesting because it's basically a step forward in the, you know, in the technologization of China's military strategy. And there is also another mention that I really want to highlight, and it is point 54 of point 14. That is like an hint to the military-civil fusion strategy. And this is really important for China's today. China is trying to merge civil and military industries and sectors of economy into one single unity, one single entity, because it realizes that for the future, it's better to have a straightforward top-down national security architecture embedding military and civil industries. So to, you know, cast a decision and be sure that the decision is, you know, respected all the way down to the soldier, and even horizontally between defense industries and civil industries. So it is, I think it is a hint to the military-civil fusion strategy. But then nuclear strategy is no mention. There is no mention of nuclear strategy. The nuclear deterrent is, of course, the backbone, the cornerstone of China's national strategy, but there is no specific mention of nuclear weapons. And this is kind of, again, business as usual. It is a confirmation of previous documents. So probably many rumors that China is shifting nuclear posture can be, you know, ignored right now. I'm not saying they ignore in the future. Maybe China will shift, will change nuclear posture, but right now there are no evidences of this. But there is something that happened, and I'm referring here to something that happened after the plenum, just after the plenum, 2 weeks after the plenum, the first half of November. I think Xinhua published an article saying that the CMC is working right now on new operational doctrine. So it's starting the process for issuing a new operational doctrine for the PLA in the future. I'm not saying that it's happening right now, but the article says that it will happen sometimes in the future. And it is really important because it would be the 5th time in history that China issues a new operational doctrine for the PLA. Basically, a doctrine is the document that says how war should be waged and how the PLA should combat and how the PLA should, you know, fight in a future war scenario. And this is really, really, really meaningful for understanding today's China. But we have no clues on what is going to be written down in the next operational doctrine. We can we can assume that there will be a lot of artificial intelligence, there will be a lot of new technologies, there will be a lot of deteriorating evaluation of the international environment as a whole, because the United States probably is going to be muscular again, even with Biden after Trump. So probably these are some elements of the future operational doctrine, but we don't know really how it is going to be. Probably next year, and this is interesting, and I really we should really keep up posted on this. Next year we will see a new defense white paper. And the defense white paper lays, writes down which are the main priorities for China's national security. And then in the report you mentioned an increase in military spending. Yeah, it is right, it's correct. Actually, it is lower than expected, and it is lower than 2019. And of course, it is because of the COVID. So probably it is because resources were diverted to other sectors of China's public budget. But there is an increase, a 6.6% increase in military spending, but it is completely coherent with the 2015 military reform. But what is really important to me is that it is really Xi Jinping all the way. So the document is really all about Xi Jinping. And this is a great confirmation, even after probably the biggest snag for China's rise in the last 20 years. This is the biggest snag that China faced in 20 years. I mean the COVID. But the document makes no mention to the COVID, or no significant mention to the problem that COVID poses to China's rise, to China's military rise, and to China's security environment. And so it is a confirmation that Xi Jinping is really the top dog here, leading the thing, leading also the military establishment. And this is even more interesting because 2020 was an interesting year for the PLA because there was the India-China military confrontation in Ladakh. And so probably there will be some lesson learned from the confrontation, from this year's confrontation. We will see in 2021 with the new white paper on defense. But right now it is really business as usual. If I may, I take just 1 minute more, because I think that the military-civil fusion strategy is really something that we should look at in the next future. And throughout the document, you see a lot of references to the military-civil fusion strategy, even if they are not explicit. For example, they talk about a rich country and a strong army. They talk about unity. They talk about reaching the merge, the fusion of these two branches of national industries. And this is about what China has been developing in the last years, and the United States refers to as a systems confrontation. China is imagining the next war, the next huge confrontation as a system confrontation, a confrontation between political systems. So war in the future is not going to be fought by the army or the navy on their own, but they're going to be fought as a political system, as a socio-economic political system. And so they are starting to lay the foundation for the next confrontation. Whatever it will be, war, open war, or it's just limited regional, local conflict. But they know that the future war, given the technological, economical integration of the world, will be a system confrontation, not an army confrontation. And this is what they refers to as political warfare, or the 2003 mention of the 3 warfare strategy. But this is really important. I don't want to really dwell or talk too much about numbers and weapon systems. This is the main takeaway from the fifth plenum proposal for the next 5 years plan. So this is it for me, and I really look forward to your comments and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo. I think this is the best. This was the best way to close our seminar today. You spoke about system confrontation, and I see that I think there's a lot of things to say about this. Of course, we don't have the time right now, but this will be really interesting to interpret Chinese moves on international scale in the next decades, as you said. Also, you mentioned rich country, strong army. It is really interesting. I was studying in the recent days some scripts that were dated back to after Qing Dynasty, so last century, and this was a term that has been recurring during the decades of Chinese history. So it will be really also interesting. It should need like a focused webinar to reason on this topic. But yeah, so two takeaways from your speech could be intelligentization of national defense, and of course, business as usual. In some kind of, in some way, business as usual is what is highlighting last updates on China's military strategy. Let's see what will happen in March, of course. So I think we are running out of time. So I thank you, all of you, so much for your intervention. I will for sure follow up to you, and I will send you also the video and the articles about this webinar to our audience. Next Thursday, we will have another webinar with Austrian Economics Monthly on the economic value of Christmas. And also for our audience, you will find our video on our YouTube channel, Facebook channel, and also on our website. For all of you, I wish you a Merry Christmas, and thank you so much.